All right.
It's always comforting when your senior pastor walks out the door when you
Where
start
you going?
speaking. Yeah.
Just remember that during review time, Pastor Dan. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I asked some of you guys to scoot in. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you for doing that. My name is Fernando. I'm the creative arts pastor here at Palm Valley Church, and so I'm just so thankful to be spending some time with you. I brought along a good friend of mine from high school, Heath Bottomley here. Heath, he'll give you a little bit of his background, but before we jump in, I thought it'd be helpful just to kind of introduce myself, give you a little bit of my background, how we landed here in ministry. I think all of us have a unique story.
Now, do you go by Fernando or Fernando?
I go by Fernando.
Okay.
Fernando.
But
it's okay. You can call me whatever you want as long as it's nice. So I've been coming to Palm Valley Church since the year 2000. So we launched in 2000. We came towards the end of that year. And by we, I mean my wife and I. And at the time, we were just dating. And I was far from God. I had made some really poor decisions in my life. And actually went to a Bible college of all things. And after Bible college is kind of when I went off the deep end for some weird reason. And thankfully, a church like Palm Valley Church existed, and they had launched inside of a movie theater, and I found myself getting gravitated towards this church because of the pastor and because of the people. And so many times we hear those stories of, no perfect people allowed, and the authenticity in the church really drove me towards it. And so God changed my life. I rededicated myself to Him and started serving right away. Sometimes we just get voluntold to start serving, right? Especially for a startup church. And a microphone was placed in our hands when they found out we could sing a little bit, and so we started to sing. And for 16 years, my wife and I led worship we as volunteers. And I don't know how many weekends we really missed, but even through multiple kids, through their infancy and so forth, we were able to serve, and it was a huge blessing in our life. In 2016, actually in the end of 2015, our founding pastor passed away. He had a terminal illness. Pastor Ryan shared that yesterday. And that was a huge transition for our church, and because of that, there were some vacancies available. There were some vacancies that needed to get filled, and I got called by Pastor Mike. I'll never forget, I was at a park with my family, and I got the call, and Pastor Mike, he basically said, "God's telling you need to take this job." I'm like, that's messed up. Come on, really? But I actually trust him enough.
Playing the God card.
But he is a pastor, and I truly believe that was the case. And my wife and I talked through it, and we talk about true worship is living out your sacrifice. And I had a stable career, a flourishing career in human resources across the board, a lot of different companies. And my role was to build teams, to build staffing models and processes and all this nerdy stuff that I won't bore you with. And I honestly was like, why would God want me to go and be in ministry? And thankfully, those gifts were able to be used for so many different things. And I said this to somebody here yesterday, and I was bragging about my team, and I see my team all around behind the scenes, and I know many of you are in that position as well. Behind the scenes, I just talked to my buddy right here, who's his name tag doesn't have enough room in it to fill all the titles that he has for his church. But I just want to say thanks to you guys for making things happen. And so today's really just about that and resourcing you. But Heath, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, first off, I can completely testify to the fact that Fernando was a mess and far from God. So I just really want to speak to that. My name's Heath, and I'm part of the executive team at Pure Heart Church. Also, I'm the conference director for a conference called Experience Conference, which meets in Orlando every year. We average about 1,200 to 1,500 worship pastors and leaders, tech teams, creatives from across the nation and often around the world. And also run a little company called Maven Media Productions, which comes alongside, helps small churches, organizations. We also lend and assist and help with the production of a podcast called Worship Probs. And so there's a lot of hats that you wear. That's basically my life, is wearing a lot of different hats at any given time. Yeah. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to dive into the whole concept of online strategy. Because whether you liked it or not, whether you were thinking about it or not, when 2020 hit, you were forced right into it. And I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing a wave of people trying to figure out, okay, so now it's not what we deem essential based on what has happened. For a lot of us, we were thrown into it. Now you're evaluating going, Do we need to keep doing it? How do we need to keep doing it? What's the future of it look like? And how is it represented with your unique church? And so we wanted to kind of take a look at that today as we move forward.
And so just the purpose of today, I spent some time trying to figure out, like, write out this whole PowerPoint and come up with a lot of data points and, like, best practices and things like that. But as I was writing it, I realized just how much of a moving target online strategy truly is, right? And so anything I would have, we would have come together and written down, like put in ink, right, which go to print, like the next day would be out of date. So I'll give you an example. Last week, my buddy here, he runs the Experience Conference, like you mentioned, and they do a one-day event every year in Peoria, Glendale?
Yes.
Here in Arizona. And I went there, and one of the breakouts was about AI. It was like, is AI stealing your job as a creative? And I was like, I have to go to that. But I remember last year, there wasn't an AI breakout. There wasn't an AI workshop because it wasn't far along enough for somebody to actually talk through it. And so that was really confirmation for me to say, you know what? Today, we just want to have a conversation with you. It's really the goal. Oh.
And nothing will communicate that more than explaining it in song. So if you'll cue the track. No, I'm just kidding.
I want to hear that. No, I'm here for it. Let's play that. So we just want to have a conversation with you. So what that means is he and I will talk through it all. A couple weeks ago, we went to lunch. Hadn't seen each other for a long time. And it was like 2 or 3 hour long lunch. Really long when you were going to lunch with Heath. But for about an hour of our conversation we were like being very friendly to each other, but we were mildly debating the models that our churches have as far as online. And it was a lot of fun because I was right the entire time, and Heath just didn't realize it.
I've been trying to play catch up since then. So.
But it was great, and I think what that truly showed us was that there isn't a right or wrong model, but there is a model that God has led your church to implement, especially from your lead pastor and from the rest of your lead team. So actually, I had a question right here. I know Pastor Juan's in the house, but how many of you in here are lead pastors? All right. Amen. Thank you guys for doing what you do. So again, we just want to have a conversation. So that also means we want to dialogue with you. So please interrupt us, raise your hand and ask a question. I've seen that in a few of our workshops, and that's really what we want to achieve. So if there's something we say that you're just like, how do you do that? Or I don't agree with you, or just need more information on it, please raise your hand, let us know. Also, we want to highlight things to consider when establishing your church's online strategy. So through our conversation, hopefully you'll pick up on a few of these things. Share some best practices that we've learned through it all.
And there's going to be things that don't work. There's going to be things that Fernando says specifically that you're going to go, that I don't agree with that. And I get it because I'm in the same boat. And more often than right, you will be right, okay? But what we can do is, what Fernando said is dead on. There's a lot of things that are neither right or wrong, but there are things that are wrong practices for wherever direction you're heading. So we can identify some of those things as well as we proceed.
Yeah, great. For the record, I don't know if I mentioned this already. Heath and I went to high school together. So if you notice, there's this like little competition here. That was it. We competed over girls. We competed over basketball. We competed over a lot of things. But we ended up being great friends and creating together. Don't say anything about that, please. Okay.
Fernando won a lot in high school, but he peaked.
Yeah. Let's move on. All right, so I think it's important for us just to define what we're talking about. When we say online, we've used the word it a lot, like, what is it actually? We're talking about here today, and here's a question for you. What is your definition of online, right? Actually, let me ask you guys that. What do you guys think online is as it relates to this conversation? Anybody? What do you say? Bringing church to, at least a portion of church to people's homes or wherever they're at. Bringing a portion of the people to.
Like the weekend services? Okay.
Yeah. Anything else fall under the online umbrella? So here's some questions for you. Social media, is that online? Online service, depending on what your model is, right? Your website, your app, if you have one, your YouTube page. And I would say the answer to this question is yes. All of this is online.
And I think we're just scratching the surface. These are probably the 4 primary ways that churches are engaging with an online presence. For a lot of you have I'm not saying this because I'm looking at the room going, I see gray hair. But it's really, a lot of us have walked through the dynamic of what online looks like, and it has shifted dramatically. I remember having the first conversation with my senior pastor years ago, different church, where I was trying to convince him that we needed a website. He's like, do you think anyone's going to really use that? And I'm like, I'm feeling, yeah, and just seeing how that has cultivated and changed over the years dynamically. There are so many options now, and what we're seeing now too, our age brackets are starting to find preferred mediums for their communication. We were talking backstage and just going, 25 and under, their preferred method of medium on online social media, everything is TikTok, okay? And then from 25 to 45 leans toward Instagram, 45 and up leans toward Facebook. This is just what people use as their primary. Now, and I heard that and I'm like, we have absolutely zero connection. We're not utilizing our TikTok account right now. Going, is that good or bad? For us, it's actually good because if we tried, we would look foolish, okay, doing it. But acknowledging the fact that there's so much diversity, people are starting to find their unique voice even within online, whereas years ago, it was basically one thing. If you posted a video up on your webpage and it would happen to be hosted on YouTube, you were online and you were cutting edge. Now there are so many different channels and conduits for you to funnel your information and also what that information looks like. With all that, you can get caught up in the thing of wanting to do everything. That may not be the answer for you. The best thing you can do is figure out what you're good at, dial it in, and do that really, really well.
Yeah. From Pure Heart's perspective, where are you guys at on social media? What platforms?
So we are in just about everything. We're anywhere from YouTube. We funnel through our website and our app. We have our online service, which is unique, and that's something that we can talk about here in a little bit. Social media, then, we also have a plan for our services as it goes out. So we even have a mobile-friendly version of it that goes out that has the vertical format, and then we also have the horizontal format for people who are watching it in the comfort of their homes or whatever like that. So we try to, not only do we distribute it as many places as we can, but we also custom tailor it to that medium.
Yeah. You guys are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter?
We basically are, because, hear this right, if you're on Twitter or X or whatever, this isn't a slam,
right.
But we over the years have pulled back from there simply because of how angry it is. And more than anything, only because it was pulling different team members into more arguments, and there was a lot of just negative stuff in there. So we went, where can we make the most impact on it? So we will add things, links, but it's not our primary thing, but we'll add things. We have a page on like LinkedIn. We have,
LinkedIn,
yeah.
Really?
And because it's a whole different demographic of people that you're reaching, and knowing who do you have, who's in your building, basically, and your digital building is you may have people who are business owners who want to be able to communicate to other business owners as well, so we need to equip them with that.
Yeah. So for Palm Valley Church, Max, where you at? There he is. Max is our communication coordinator. He's the one that keeps me honest on all things, so keep me honest on this. But we have an Instagram account. Instagram account. We have Facebook account and Facebook groups as well. We do not have a Twitter or X account. I think we might have an old one, but honestly, I don't understand it well enough for us to jump in there. I don't know if that's the right move or not. Like I said, we're still learning. We're definitely not on TikTok, right? Okay. But that's
you are. You may not know it, but you are on TikTok. Yeah.
I have a lot of followers. I keep getting these notifications. It's weird. But yeah, so like
me.
We have it. And to Heath's point earlier, one of the reasons why we've limited the amount of spaces that we're in is because we can only do so many well, at least what we think is well, and set that bar of excellence. In the past, when something new came out, we would continue to just dive in. We're going all in on this platform, and over time it fizzles out. Let me ask you guys a question. How many of your churches are notorious for, actually, I'll just ask this question, are notorious for starting something strong and then letting it kind of fizzle down a little bit? Yeah, I see some. Yeah, we've all done that. Yeah, one of the main questions we ask around here, or I ask around here, it's probably getting annoying. Is like, okay, we want to do this, but how long is it going to go for? Like, how are we going to sustain that? Because once we jump into this area, we need to maintain it and sustain it for a long time. So this is going to require these resources to do it. If you go, I would approach it the same way when it comes to social media. If you're going to go on a platform, make sure you're deeply committed to doing that. You can explore it a bit, but once you make the announcement that you're there, you're inviting people to your house, and you want to make sure that you have food for them to eat.
Because programs can be emotionally driven. Okay, we know this, and that's actually a good thing, because you'll get weight and energy behind them based on a season, and then that season subsides and you're done. Communication lives and breathes all around consistency. Okay, and that's the difference here. If you are viewing your online strategy as a program, it will rise and fall based on either the leader or the energy that's in place. If you view it as a communication strategy, then you have got to back that with consistency. And it's so important that what we see a lot of times is we will do knee-jerk reactions to things, going, oh, we're getting a lot of views, we're getting a lot of momentum. Oh, we didn't get a lot the last few weeks. Oh, this month has been low. Suddenly all the energy gets sucked out of it. And that's the time when you actually need to push in with more consistency. So if you commit to an online strategy, you need to remain consistent with it. That does not mean that you don't adapt, that you're not changing things, tweaking things, evaluating, and updating. It simply means that you don't pull back from that form of communication. Because for some people, how many of you are involved in worship ministry at all in your churches as well? Okay. Many of you know this. By the point that you're actually sick and tired of a song, like, I don't want to hear the song one more time. If I hear Holy Forever one more time, I'm going to write Chris Tomlin and tell him to stop. Yeah. But right when we get to that point is right when our people are like, you know that new song we're doing? I really, what's it called? I really like it. The same thing is true with communication. Right when we feel, oh man, they should have this down by now, they're just starting to scratch the surface on absorbing what you're communicating. So consistency is key.
That's great. That's great. I have just a quick survey. How many of you have an church Instagram account? Pretty much everyone. How about Facebook? Okay, let's see how it dwindles down. Twitter, X. Do I need to call it X? Okay, X. You're on X. How's that?
We have an account.
Uh-huh.
Not really posted anything
Yeah.
on it lately.
Is there a reason for that behind the scenes? Is it similar to what we were saying to Twitter?
Just because I can't do it all.
Mm-hmm. Amen, bro. Okay. How about TikTok? Let's go. How's that going?
It's the platform where we have the least engagement.
Okay. Yeah. Is it a platform that you post a lot on? I'm so old. That you post a lot on there? Oh my gosh, I feel so dumb. Yeah. Okay. So Facebook and Instagram seems to really still be the center for a lot of the content that we drive and exposure. Okay. How about YouTube? Everybody posts on YouTube? We're going to get to our online service. I think that's really where we're going to we'll show you our difference of opinion on that. For YouTube, though, I'm curious, how many of you actually stream your services on YouTube? Okay. How many of you stream your services on Facebook Live, Instagram? Okay. That's good. That's good to know. I just want to move forward on the online strategy development. So these are just some questions we're going to ask, and these are the most crucial ones. So as you're diving into developing your online strategy, actually, let me ask you one more question. How many of you feel like you have a really fully baked online strategy at your churches? It's okay if you don't have, okay. Like I said before, it's a moving target, so it changes constantly, right? Like we could just decide today what we're doing, but by tomorrow it's going to change, or it should change is probably a better way to say that. So
we always need to be adapting,
yeah.
and always learning.
So the first question to ask is why? Why are you connecting online? Yep. Heath brought this up behind the scenes here as we were kind of writing this out, and that was the big question for you to ask, right? On why is it important to connect online? I don't know if you can shed some light on.
Well, I think a lot of times what we try to do is, and you guys know this, you live in this, is a lot of times as churches we do things because other people are doing them. Okay, and then we copy and paste into our system, and so we end up with our structure of things and programs that we're doing that actually are very Frankenstein's monster. It's like, okay, so we got this from Elevation, Bethel does this, okay, hey, North Coast does this, and then you just have this hodgepodge of stuff. I always encourage organizations and churches that I'm consulting or whatever to actually sit down and go, why do you feel you need to do this? Because if you don't start there, then there will always be a reason to shift to a different model. There will always be a flashier object that comes around or something that's, ooh, that looks more fun, and you'll shift to that. If you have a strong why, if you understand why your ministry area needs this, what is it trying to accomplish, who are you trying to reach, all of those things, then everything will always come back to adapting and adjusting to have a better impact. It'll never be a question of, should we do this? If your why isn't strong enough to propel you into yes, we should, then you should probably take a step back and figure that out. I will say this, that there is still a lot of argument going on about the impact of online presence and things like that. And I will tell you this right now, that when the printed word actually came into play, when the printing press started happening, understand that the biggest pushback happened from within the church, which is interesting historically to understand that. Their biggest pushback was this. At that point, people had to congregate from miles away and come and hear the word being delivered, being read aloud. And so suddenly, the pushback was, if we put a printed Bible in everyone's hands, they're no longer going to be in community together. Does that sound familiar? Okay. One of the traps that we can get into is going, if we do an online strategy, we will be pushing against getting people into community. And I will tell you this, that if you don't have a strategy, then yes, you might get people who are independent on their own. But if it is actually a Christ-centered delivery system, everything will always be pointing people into community. How that community looks may look different. In the same way church today looks very different than it did in the 1600s. But I think that as long as we're adapting and evolving on this, that we will see the body of Christ grow in ways that we never anticipated or thought that it might be able to before. So that all comes back to the why. Why are we doing this? And understanding in your unique circle, in your unique ministry, I would say that it would be really good to even have a 30-second version. Can you communicate in 30 seconds why you have an online strategy for your church? Because someone's going to come up to you in the tech booth, corner you at the front of the stage or whatever, and go, why are we doing this? And I would encourage you, understand, because not only will that help with the vision of it, but it will also help cement your mind and give you the energy that you need in order to continue it.
That's good. Let's go. So the why is obviously really crucial, and that applies to so many different things that we make decisions on in ministry, doesn't it? The other question is who? Who are you trying to reach? Who is your audience? And this is where your strategy really comes into play. So for us here at Palm Valley Church, our who is are the weekend attenders. Who are we trying to reach? It's within our community, right? We have a 15-mile radius, but obviously when it comes to online, it exceeds past that, beyond that as well. But for us, the who doesn't necessarily include those outside of our state, right? The who doesn't apply to those globally. Now, don't get me wrong. Everyone needs to hear the gospel, right? But there are local churches in those different areas that can reach those people. And for us, the who is the people who attend our in-person services and the people in our community. Our mission here at Palm Valley Church is to invite people to meet Jesus and follow him with our lives. So if we take seriously the invite people to meet Jesus, we want to personally introduce them to Jesus. And in order to do that personally, in person, we want them to come into our services. And I know Pure Heart might have a little bit of a different take on that.
Yeah, and this is where this gets really fun, because it shows the diversity of this. Our why is slightly different, and that's okay. Our why is we wanted to, and we asked this question early on, going, do we want to utilize our online presence in order to get people through a physical door or onto a physical campus, or do we want it to exist as another campus entirely? We had to start with that because everything then what we did was shaped outside of that and built on that. Where we landed was we wanted our online to be an actual campus Why? Because we feel that we have a specific niche calling to Pure Heart Church. I think Don Wilson, who used to be the pastor of CCV before he retired, said it best. He was like, honestly, Pure Heart could be right next door to us, and it would not diminish in size, but I think it would continue to grow as we grow because we are so uniquely different. Because of that unique element of our ministry, we knew that there was a strong chance that there would be people who are in areas that have churches, but just aren't getting that same connection that they would with this niche element of what the ministry at Pure Heart was. So we asked the question, are we going to be an on-ramp to live service, or are we going to be what we call a cul-de-sac? It's a destination. You're only going there because that's where you want to land. We prayed about it, the team prayed about it, and we said, we want to be a cul-de-sac. We want to be a destination for people, which committed us to a bigger process. Because what we ended up doing is all of our stuff is pre-recorded during the week. So Dan, who is our primary communicator, Dan Steffen, he comes in and he has his message ready to record on Wednesday morning. Wednesday morning he records, and he records it talking to the person on the other side of the camera. He has someone that's his whole intent. He is having a conversation with the person on the other side of the screen. Our worship dynamic is also geared that way. It's very intimate and personal. And then we have a host who engages directly. And this is why this is so crucial in understanding this branch, is that suddenly all of our announcements also had to take a shift as well. Because we'd be talking about things that were highly local. How do we communicate that to people who we were in 165 countries last year. So we had to intentionally think applicably, how does that lay out? Also, when we're talking about small groups and getting people connected, we had to create a system for that. I heard someone recently say, if you don't have an online plan for discipleship, you don't have a plan for discipleship. Because it's so ingrained in our culture nowadays, it's actually the primary presence in how a lot of people engage. So that unique bent right there, it's not that we don't offer broadcasts. Actually, every single campus offers a live broadcast of that room.
Where does it stream?
And it streams right off of our website.
Yeah.
And it's funneled through YouTube and then branches into our website. And so people can go to the campus that they want and click Watch Live. We did that for the people who, that's their thing. They were sick that day, and they just wanted to be in the room, and they're the guys who come in and go, I love how our pastor is in the moment. You know, I don't like because for people, preferences become beliefs very easily. And so they're like, I don't like how you do this. And I'm like, that's great. It wasn't for you. You know, so we do offer something that is uniquely for them. It's an easy fix so that they can do it. But what we've seen is that our live broadcast at those campuses is less than 5% of our total viewership for our online campus. Mm-hmm. So the online campus, the pre-recorded, the thing that takes a little bit more energy and all of the elements, ends up being thousands of people during the week as opposed to 50. And so, but we offer it because we know it's of value.
Question for you though. So the reach that you have, was that on purpose, or is this just a result of the model, or did you specifically target people that don't attend in person?
We, even down to our times when we launch, we would actually launch and have service times online that were East Coast time and West Coast time. Initially, when we started, we were doing Arizona time, but we all know that Arizona time messes everyone else up because we don't change. And so people who were outside of it, it would result in inconsistency. Like we talked about, consistency is a huge thing with communication. So we went, this is an East Coast service time, this is a West Coast service time, and then we have a local area service time. So we are broadcasting our online service several times throughout the weekend, and actually also do a Wednesday night with just the message, and then also we just started a Friday night on just social media with just the message. Yeah. So.
Can I ask a question in the room, though? How many of you just do a live stream of your services? Is that kind of the model that we're talking about? Do any of you do like a pre-recorded, produced service that you replay on demand, or is it really just a stream? Anyone out there?
What we do the live stream, and then from there we edit, and then it's available on YouTube.
Yeah. For them afterwards. So Pastor Juan just said that they will stream and then they will edit after the fact, right? And so what sort of edits do you guys make to your stream?
Well, just like right now, if there's ever mess ups, we clip that out.
Yeah.
You know, at the end, you know,
You guys, there's mess ups on it? Are
You just have the weird voice overdub. And then the Lord said to James. Yeah.
and then, you know, right now, we don't have a strong online mixing for our you know, worship ministry.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't sound at all like it sounds in here, right? And
Sure.
so what we do is live, we're like, hey, you'll get the whole thing, but then afterwards we edit just and put the teaching online.
Yeah, okay. How many of you keep the entire service on your stream after Sunday? Yeah? How many of you are in worship ministry? You in worship? How does that, does the mix feel to you after the fact? It's okay, because it's one of the biggest drawbacks to the way Palm Valley Church does it, to be honest with you. The way Pure Heart does it, they're able to go in and post-produce audio and things like that. So there's a huge benefit to that part. For Palm Valley Church, when we launched our online, and I hesitate to call it campus because campus means something, right? But we did launch our online campus. So I'll say that this was 5 or 6 years ago, and we went with a simulated live model, which is really what Heath is talking about. Simulated live is just that. You pre-capture, you post-produce, right? Your audience is the lens, right? So Pastor Dan does a great job. I've seen him. Pastor Dan's the lead pastor of Pure Heart Church, and he will give he's great on camera, by the way. That is a huge benefit too. He speaks to you like as if he's talking to you directly through the lens.
And I'll circle back to that once you're done, because that's important.
Well, go ahead. Why don't you do that?
So a common mistake that we make, there are a lot of people that are great live. They just, it's an intangible, it's an X factor. They just have that. They connect really well live, and we make the assumption that they will connect really well on video. And that's just not true. So again, pulling away from the cookie cutter, copy and paste format, you have to really, as you're developing your why, figure out who are you trying to reach, and who are you as a community. Not just who are the people that you're trying to connect to, who are you as a unique ministry? So, because again, I've run into people who are so dynamic live, but then online, you see them on video and there's nothing. Yeah. Like you're going, do people actually go to this church? That's the judgmental side of me there. But it shocks you because it just doesn't translate the same way. In the same way, worship or the music element of your service in the room has a different feel, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. Does it translate online? If it doesn't translate online, do you either A, have to do it in a different format, or B, do you need to make a change to it that is online deliverable as well?
Yeah, that reminds me, I was with Pastor Ryan, the lead pastor here at Palm Valley Church, and we went to Saddleback, and he was capturing something for them there, and it was last minute. And so they're like, Pastor Ryan, can we record you doing a message video or something? It was just something, it was a little complex. It would have been complex for me, and it was last minute. And then Pastor Ryan gets up in front of the camera. He's like, do I stand here? And he just knocks it out of the park, first take. And they literally looked at him like, wow, that was great. I'm like, what do you think this guy does all week? Like, this is literally what he does. So you are so right about that. And we're lucky to have great communicators in that way. But back to the Palm Valley story. So we started out as Simulated Live, and we had a full production team here. We had more headcount at the time that would professional videographers, and we had time during the week, and we had a process during the week where Pastor Ryan would have his message done on Wednesdays, and he would actually record it on Wednesdays, and that was such a huge ask for him, right? Because you lead pastors know, like, new ideas come last minute, right? Or maybe you just haven't received that word that you need to deliver, and so just pushing that timeline up is difficult, and it comes with message notes, and we need all of this information early. And we were able to pull that off for a long time, and thank God that we were in that position when 2020 came. And so we were already ahead of the game, and it was only through God that we were able to do that. And so we were able to continue to capture and do that model for a while. But what we noticed after COVID was that, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but people didn't really come back to church at that time, right? They got kind of used to sitting in their living rooms watching services, or, I'll do this, watching services, right? Or they were still connected to us. They still called us their church, but they weren't attending in person. And so we saw a lot of empty seats in here, and it was for obvious reasons. But over time, we really felt our heart was, God compelled our heart to bring people back in, because for us, the Palm Valley experience is the most unique thing out there, right? When we put our stuff online, it feels like I don't want it to feel like we're competing with other churches out there. What we want is we want to show the uniqueness of our church and how our church can reach our community in a unique way, right? We're not here for every single person in the community, but there are people in the community that are going to connect with Palm Valley Church, just like I did when I was so much younger. I had gone to a lot of other churches, but for some reason, this church connected with us. And so we made the decision here to say, you know what? Let's give people a glimpse of what happens here in person, flaws and all, right? Like, hey, Zach's here, and he leads worship here all the time. He's our worship pastor here, and we both forget words all the time, right? Somebody come up in announcements, and
Zach's like, yes, you do. Yes, you do.
we have 3 confidence monitors, and they don't work all the time, right? Actually, they work. My brain doesn't work, so that's really the key. Yeah, Ron Burgundy, man. Whatever it says, I just say it. San Diego. So like flaws and all, and one of our values here is authenticity, right? We just want to be real. This is truly who we are. And so we want to compel people that are in our community as they see it to say, you know what, I can go to that church. I see some of the flaws. I see some of the mess-ups maybe online. And it's hard for us as perfectionists here to say, you know what, man, I got to go back in and edit that out, right? But at some point in time, the type of people that we reach, the people that want to be here, it's okay, no perfect people allowed here, and we're not perfect either. And so we want to give them a glimpse of that. But that comes with a lot of drawbacks too, right? Our mix online is not perfect. And every single week, and Max does a great job of it, but there's so many things to think about. He really does, and it's a lot of times it's like blaming the mixer for the bad sound, right? Sometimes maybe I'm just singing off key, so it's probably that. Like no matter how many different things you do back there, it's not going to fix it. But so that is definitely a drawback for us, and so we're willing to accept that, knowing that in the long term we want people to come to our church, and then when they come into this experience, it's different, right? Because in the room, it's completely different. And so that's the model that we've chosen to go. And so I want to encourage you, if you guys are just streaming, that's okay. But there's also a different way to do it, and it's reaching people. That's the goal of it all right now.
And I think between these 2 examples of online presence, the big thing that I wanted to push with you guys is don't get caught up in trying to do everything, okay? That's probably one of the biggest pitfalls. Even some of the largest churches can't do everything. Figure out what you uniquely can do and then do it really well. With our team, we really push this going, we are not asking for perfection because perfection will also always highlight what you missed. Okay? Perfection always points out the things that you fell short on. But what we do ask is for excellence. Because what we want to do is eliminate things that will be the biggest stumbling areas for people, the biggest distractions for people. In Isaiah 40 talks about, hey, a voice crying in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord. And then he goes into talking about this whole thing where he's going, okay, so go ahead and level the hills and fill in the valleys. And you're talking to people who have no type of machinery or whatever. So what he's asking of them is very hard work. But really what he's asking is going, get all the distractions out of the way. You are not responsible for the glory of God then showing, but if you get the distractions out of the way, the glory of God will be able to connect with people in a way that maybe may have been impossible before. So all that to say is going, do what you can pull off really well. Perfectly? No. Because that'll just mess you up and you'll go crazy and you'll drive your team insane. Constantly going, we missed it. If every weekend after the service is talking about what you missed, if that's the first where you have to start, then you need to change focus. So what are you doing? Make sure it's a handful of things, whatever it is that fits your demographic too. Do not get into TikTok for 25 and under if your congregation happens to be 40 and up. I'm just saying, yeah, you might go, that's the way that we're going to grow. Honestly, you're going to grow in your demographic in person before you grow online with that, okay? And then you can lean into strengths of people who actually buy into your vision, who have a heart for that, and also have a mentality generationally to minister in that platform, okay? So don't try to be who you're not. That inauthentic will kill you, okay? But identify who is your church. Who are the people who connect with the delivery and also the heartbeat of who you are? Then find the communication method that best fits them, okay? If you are a church of 40 and up, your strongest demographic is going to be Facebook. So knowing that, you can lean into Facebook heavier. You can do special things. You can do Facebook Lives as opposed to doing Instagram Lives. Simple little things like that. But that will end up helping with your communication. If you find that you've got a big community that is between 20 and 40, lean into Instagram. Start doing more short form elements as well. Do things that are anywhere from a couple minutes up to 15 minutes in length on stuff, because that's going to be the most digestible thing for that age demographic. Find out who you are and lean into that consistency-wise, because every medium has different opportunities and things that you can utilize with it. And so if you focus in on one, you can actually unpack more of it and figure out things that you might have been missing when you were more spread out.
That's good. That's good. I want to just mention this too. Pastor here mentioned something earlier, how you're not on X because you have to do everything, right? And maybe that's kind of hitting some of you right now, where like, hey, we don't have all these resources that maybe Palm Valley or Pure Heart does. And honestly, there's always a church that has way more resources than we do. The comparison game is brutal, right? It really is. It's the thief of joy sometimes. But can I encourage you right now? So I'm going to jump into worship arts really quick here, and this is one of our values in worship arts, and it's just to hold true to our values and to our mission, and it has to come at a cost sometimes, right? We read in Romans 12 that worship is truly just a sacrificial way to live. Like, that's what true worship is, to live a life of sacrifice, right? And what does that mean? What are you sacrificing? Your right time, talent, treasure, and so forth. But sometimes you have to sacrifice what you think is quality, or what you think are the standards that you set, just to be true to who God has called you to be. And so to use a worship arts example, I'll use Zach again. I'm picking on him a little bit, but also Pastor Gabe, who you guys heard from yesterday and you saw on stage a few times. Sometimes the question comes up, it's like, okay, we're holding our volunteers to such a huge standard here because we know that being on a platform here, you are carrying a mantle of leadership and representing your church in a way that people will come up and view you as leadership, right? Many times the people on stage here are going to be up there as long as our lead pastor is going to be. And so just by affiliation, right, they're viewed that way. And so because of that, we have such high standards for our volunteers. And I'm getting into a different workshop, but it's going somewhere, I promise. And because of those values that we hold, we have to be able to say no. We have to be able to make that tough call and have that crucial conversation with somebody and say, you know what, we're just not going to be able to have you play this weekend because there's a sin issue in your life that's evident, and I want to work with you. And we're not kicking them off the team. We want to pastor them through it. Or somebody comes in that's deeply talented, right? And we're like, well, this is the best singer we've ever seen, or this guy's a great guitar player, but then you go to their Instagram account, or you talk to them a little bit about it, and they don't quite know Jesus yet. Or there's some things in their life that might come to light. And so what we say is, you know what? I know Pastor Zach can play the guitar well, and he can sing. So if it comes to a point where we have to sacrifice everything, just so that Zach is the only one on stage leading worship, guess what? God is going to be honored that day because we lived out true worship in that moment, because we held to the values that God's placed on our heart. We have to be willing to do that. And so the reason I bring that up is when it comes to your online stream or whatever it is, like maybe you don't have a ton of production people or a ton of camera operators or editors, things like that. Give God your very best. Do what you can with what God has given you, and he will bless that. That is the whole goal of this, right? Let's just be real. We can talk through all the technical stuff. We can talk through strategy, but at the end of the day, God has placed us in this position to reach the lost. How can we best do that with the gifts that we were given and the talents we were given? We don't want to bury our talents, right? We want, when the master comes back, to be able to say, we've multiplied this with what you've given us, and eventually we get more. And so that's what we've noticed here at Palm Valley Church as well. And it's just really important, too, just as far as coming up with this development. I want to encourage you guys, because I know churches are in different places, and so many times we run into that tension point as well.
And so the spiritual element of this is unique to our churches and everything. Like, people in corporate settings, they're not debating, going, hey, are we reaching people spiritually? No, they're going, are we selling the product that we need to? Are we doing the ad space the right way and everything like that? Marrying these two together can really feel troublesome at times. I want to encourage you live with the tension. Don't write things off simply because it's hard, because some of the best things are difficult to do, okay? So what I would encourage you with logistically is this. Again, we can't do everything. Narrow it down. What can we do really well? That also comes down to, I'm going to get really into the weeds here. the gear that you use. Instead of, say you're like, I can't afford cameras, okay, don't try to do a 4-camera shot for your live service if you don't have cameras. Get one really good camera and use it well, okay? That is better than going, we're gonna get 4 cameras and they're all kind of sub-average, but at least we got some diversity in the shot. Yeah, there's the phrase that we would use in studio days and everything, you can't polish a turd, okay? And it's just, you just can't. You can try to make that look really good, but it is what it is.
I don't see anyone writing that down. You guys want to write that one down?
Those are words to live by, my friend. They apply to so many things in life. You cannot polish a turd.
Yeah. T-shirt idea, merch. Pastor Ryan's kicking me out right now. Sorry, buddy.
And he's walking out. See, my pastor walked out long before because he knew what was coming.
Yeah,
so,
he did.
No, but that shows you how important the capture is, okay? Instead of trying to do mic everything, make sure that your microphone, that one capture of the main speaker is dialed in. If you need to sacrifice some of the extremities on things, do that so that you can make sure that the primary capture works. And I'll tell you what, some of the tried and true things, we can get into all the different, I need one of these Neumann mics. I need one of the, you know what? Some of the best captures that I've seen are on just simple 58s, okay? You don't have to go with the flashiest stuff. You have to figure out what translates the person that you're trying to capture onto the digital space the most efficiently. In the same way in the studio and everything, it would always blow people away that a lot of guys like the Stones or whatever would capture vocals with 57s. And that was their thing, 57s and a pop screen. And that because it translated the voice the best. Okay, I would recommend get someone in who understands EQ settings in there to just do a save. If you don't have something that's a digital board where you can save it, actually take a picture of what they dial in because everyone's voice is different. My voice has a little bit more of high mids in it, and so we need to work on that anytime I do anything digitally. We have some that are warmer, and actually, here's the other thing, they're too warm, so they're almost to the point of soothing, to where you're listening to them and you're just like, okay, I'm slowly getting lulled to sleep. You don't want that either. Find something that actually dials it in, doesn't make them sound weird, but actually is the best representation in a digital format. So simpler is better. Less gear, if you can't afford it, is better than getting a bunch of mediocre gear. I cannot emphasize that enough because most churches will pick things and go, that's a great deal, we'll get the whole thing in a box. Don't do it, okay? Get a couple items and make sure, put your finances, because I get it, money is always going to be an issue. But one of the areas that you get what you paid for is in musical gear and in technology, okay? And people go, I just can't get the right sound out of my guitar, and it's like, because you paid $100 for it. It's nothing against it, it's not a slam other than the fact of it will sound like what you bought. Technology is the same way, okay?
So something else to think about too, equipment's great if you're able to invest in that, but then there's that big question, right? How do I use it, right? Like I don't have anyone that can run this. Like I say this all the time. I can't do most of the things that my team is responsible for. I am not the guy to do it. Like I have.
You
to
were struggling with this. So,
yeah, I was struggling with this. So, so my encouragement to you is like, there's just a ton of ways. This is super practical, right? I know that we all know this, right? Like I installed cabinets in my house last year. I didn't know how to do that, but I went to YouTube and looked it up, and I watched like 10 different YouTube videos, and I did it. And they're a little crooked, but that's okay, right? Because my wife loves me anyway, and I just turn the lights off when she goes in there. I'm just kidding. They are a little crooked, but that's a great way. I mean, most of our team, I would say the vast majority of our team, we do have staff, but pretty much everything's here is run by volunteers. And by everything, it's about maybe 90% of the stuff here is run by volunteers. And yes, there's some tension points, right, where it's, man, I wish that camera shot was better. But it's going to take time and investment on our part to invest in them and share with them clarity. This is where we're going. This is what we want to do. Same when it comes to gear. Do the research. Go to YouTube. Like, spend some time. Like, I play chess all the time, and I watch a lot of chess videos. But maybe I should be watching. Instead of doing that, I can invest my time in learning how to set. I'm going to show my ignorance here. Set the right setting on a camera. Like I said, I don't know a lot about it. But also, like, there's that. And then also, your church wants to help. Something we say here all the time is don't say no for somebody. Don't say no for somebody. I don't want to ask them because, like, this is what they do professionally, and, I don't want to ask them to come in, and I know that they normally charge this amount for it, but you know what, man? People are waiting to jump in and support. I can't tell you how many people have come to this conference that are serving, and I continue to thank them. Like, I don't want to be anywhere else but here. And I'm like, wow, you just gave, like, 12-hour days, 3 days in a row. Don't say no for them. So just an encouragement to you, if you feel overwhelmed by getting that one great piece of equipment, not knowing how to use it, God will provide for you. Just keep your ears to the ground, start doing the research, and you will interact with people that can, and don't say no for people and ask them to help equip you in that area.
I'd also encourage you, this is a content information, because I know we're going, what are you communicating, that we're kind of in that mid-range right there. As you're dealing with your content, what I would encourage you is this: in the same way that live sound, live experience is different, it translates different than what you have in a digital space, so does how you communicate the outside of your content. Don't get married to titles of things, what the phrasing is on stuff. We worked through with one of the pastors on our team. We ended up putting something online. He's like, that's not the title of my message. And I'm like, that's because the title of your message sucked. No, it was because even though it made sense to him in that moment and who he was communicating to, in a digital space, it communicated differently. It did not carry the same weight. And we also know this: there are things that, the way that things get spread out there are through the wonderful world of algorithms and things like that. So a lot of that are familiar words, keywords, and phrases. So understanding these things and everything, be willing to navigate away from how you think something should be because it's a live element, because you can communicate it well in person. In a digital space, it varies. There's a lot of varying on there. What we ended up doing a lot of is we tie in a keyword that's in the title in a digital space with what we do is the printed out or the actual typed out content of whatever the message or a devotional or whatever that is, highlighting certain keywords as well from there. If you have that in 3 different spaces, if it's also in the web page that it's embedded in, having that keyword in those 3 areas actually highlights it and puts it to the front in searches a lot more prominently. It connects it out there. But if you're so married into how you wanted the title to be or what you think the emphasis is, you could actually lose that opportunity in a digital space. It doesn't translate.
That's good. Well, let's talk about this last bullet point on here. We have about 8 minutes or so left. How are you measuring success? And this is so crucial, right? Any strategy that's worth anything is going to have metrics involved. And so metrics could be attendance, views, how many subscribers you have, but really what it comes down to, what's most crucial to you? What is important to your lead pastor? Like, how does that translate to your lead pastor as far as, like, hey, how are we reaching people? What story does it tell, right? I'll use one example, and we can talk through this one. For our online services, for the longest time, what we did is we would do a survey at the very beginning. And that was controversial, right? When people would log in, because we use the Life Church platform. And so at the very beginning, we were able to put a survey on the front. And it was like, why would you do that, Fernando? Like, seriously, like, that is like the huge barrier for people to stay online. But what we really want to do is actually get actual real data, real numbers on how many people. And so people would fill the survey out. How many people are watching with you today? And it was just like 3 questions or something like that. And we would just get enough data to know how many people actually represented on that stream. Because you can turn those numbers into anything. It's confusing, right? And over time, we noticed that we averaged, I think it was 2.7 or something like that. I can't remember the multiplier. I think it was like in the 2.3 or 2.7, something like that. And we noticed that the average amount of people that would attend our service, that was how many were per household or per viewer, right, per user. And so we did an analysis later. We have our smarter people than me that did it, and we're like, Fernando, you have like a 30-some% drop-off rate because of that survey. Like, you're losing people. And I'm like, okay, they were right. So we removed that survey. But now we feel super confident on that multiplier. We're not using averages out there. We're using the Palm Valley Church average that we have data over 4 or 5 years on. And so now when we measure users, we know that we use that multiplier and we feel confident in it. And guess what? When it spits out those numbers and we measure our attendance, it measures up to our per giving capita here, right? It measures up to that. And if we measured it with, whatever, use a different metric, the thousands and thousands of views, it would probably skew that number. And for our pastor here, it's really important to know, is our church giving? What is the giving per capita here? And so for us, that was crucial, but that's what's crucial to us here. And I know in a different model, the different numbers mean different things, and they're more important in different ways.
And I would encourage you, because what Fernando's touching on here is, I think, probably it comes down to a heart issue with our ministries. And this is so vital, is this. Do not get caught in the comparison game. Okay? And you know this, everyone counts different, and senior pastors too. We used to joke around, they have the multiplier of 3. It's like 150 people will be there, 50 people will be there. There's some pastors when they count, when they're counting the weekend, they're counting everyone on campus. They're counting the people who drove slower by the parking lot. That's 2 right there. So, but what we do with online, I get asked this a lot, going, okay, so what's the exact multiplier and everything? And what they're really asking when I dig down is, how can they compare their church to another church? Which I get it. We all have that tendency because we want to know, am I doing it right? And what I'm going to push back on is this. When it comes to your digital strategy, it has to make sense for how your ministry works, okay? It has to make sense for how you evaluate success, not how Life Church evaluates success, not how Mosaic evaluates success. What are the things that you need to know in order to quantify energy, resources, margin, any of those things? What are the things that you need to know in order to make sure that it is successful in your ministry area? Because I'll tell you what, when people start bantering back and forth or start comparing, you might actually pull back from a ministry that is absolutely effective for your church simply because it didn't measure up to the variables of another church that you are using as your standard. And that's a dangerous place to be, because you could actually write off important ministry simply out of comparison.
Yeah.
So make sure it makes sense. Whatever metrics you use, like Fernando is saying, make sure it makes sense for what you guys need to know for decision making, not what somebody else needs.
Last thing I'll say about that, super crucial too, once you start measuring, continue to measure, right? Because if you pivot on what you're measuring from one year to the next, there is no way to compare effectiveness year over year. So that's crucial as well. You can add things that you're measuring, but continue to measure consistently across the board. So
consistency eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah. Okay, we have 3 minutes. I want to honor it because I'm getting hungry. My stomach's starting to growl. The microphone's picking it up. We would love to have answer any questions you have, but I'm not sure right now, just in this setting is the right time, but we're going to hang out for a while. If you want to come up and chat with us, we'd love to do that. But again, I just want to honor the time. Let me ask you guys, though. Actually, let me just tell you guys, I love you, and our heart is for you, and our heart is for our brothers and sisters in Christ who are in the trenches alongside us, and we want to be a resource to you. A lot of the language that you and I used tonight was, we need to do this, you should do this, and I know the question continues coming, like, how? How do we pull that off? And maybe we can help. Maybe there's a way that we can give some ideas and some best practices that we've had across the board. So I hope that's helpful to you. I'm going to go ahead and pray, and then we'll close the session, and you guys can come chat with us anytime you see us, okay? Is that good? You guys good? All right, let me pray. God, thank you so much. Lord, thank you so much for everyone in this room, Lord. Thank you for all the folks that are at this conference, Lord, in different breakouts right now, God. Lord, it's a testament, Lord, to our heart for you, Lord, how we want to learn how to better serve you, how to better reach the lost for you, God. Thank you for this opportunity we have, Lord. Lord, I pray that none of us take it for granted, God. It gets really hard sometimes, Lord. You know this, Lord. But thank you for being the ultimate example of true sacrifice for us, Lord, as you gave it all, Lord, just so that we could draw near to you, Lord. And so, Lord, I pray we remember that, Lord, when it gets tough. I pray that you give us ideas, Lord, that we reflect your image of creativity every single day, Lord. And, Lord, bring people on our path, Lord, that can help, Lord. Lord, I pray that you bring the resources to us, Lord. You've told us that you're Jehovah Jireh, Lord, and so we trust you to provide for all things, God. Lord, we love you. We give you praise, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thanks, God. Appreciate you.